thinking about all this stuff though is it goes back to scripture, like guard your heart, guard your mind. And it's really hard to do that with what's going on with the phones and the social media. It's like right there. You have to have the discipline, and like that's tough as a young man or a young woman. You haven't developed discipline. And how are you gonna so maybe that's something that we need to instill in our children is to have the discipline. I don't know how you go about doing that, because they're going to have this phone in their hands. And maybe this is the problem, because when we were younger, what did our parents do? They tried to not let us watch TV after a certain time, not let us
play video
see
games.
things, the things that we were allowing in our minds. They knew, don't, you don't want too much of that.
Yeah.
And now it's out of control, with this. So maybe you don't give your child a phone at such a young age.
I know one. So this worked. I guess it worked for me. With what my mom did. So her biggest thing was I wasn't technically allowed to have a girlfriend until I was 18. She said, "John, you are not going to mess with girls. You are not. You can go to dances if there's a prom or something you want. Yeah, you can ask a girl out. You can go to a dance, but you will not have a girlfriend until you're 18." And I would, every so often I would, ask why. I'm like, "Well, Mom, why? Why can't I? What's going on? I really like this girl. We're real close friends." She's like, "Yeah, it can stay friends." She's like, "You don't know yourself, and life is gonna get really weird she said confusing for you, and you're not going to know why. That's just what is going to happen in your mind. It may not happen now, but it's going to happen." She's talking about puberty and growing up, and she's like, "You just need to worry." And I wasn't the best in school anyway, so she's like, "You just need to concentrate and graduate." Like that was her thing. Like she was born in 47, so you'd say she was a little bit of an older school mentality, but I guess where she came from in Kentucky, a lot of people didn't even get through high school. So her biggest thing too was, "John, you need to get through high school, and you don't need the confusing aspect of a relationship to get in your way." Now, granted, truth be told, I would tell my mom, "Hey, I'm going out with Ryan and David. We're gonna go see a movie." And there was, but then there would also be Ryan always had a girlfriend back then, and she would always bring a friend, and I would go out, and that's how I would hang out with girls, right?
Yeah.
So, we were talking about limiting stuff.
Just trying to protect you.
Yeah, she was, and so it worked for me. I'm sure most modern day parents would be like, "That's unreasonable. 18."
Sure.
What's the old KISS method? Keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's risk mitigation. She was mitigating your risk for, getting involved with a young lady and possibly doing something that was before, you should have.
She might have been protecting a young lady too. I mean, let's say that you impregnated somebody at a young age.
Yeah.
Were unable to take care of that kid properly, and maybe she knew that how that could affect a woman, in the same way. There's a lot of mitigation strategy there, and every parent deals with how they're going to raise their kid, and that was her way of doing it.
And worked out. Go ahead.
Yeah, but there was no way to completely stop you from doing that, right?
No.
And so, David, going back to your suggestion about the cell phone, maybe we don't give our kids phones, but then the next kid at the school has a phone. Hey, Connor, come over here and look at this.
I think, for sure. That's an opportunity that they might get them, but you don't have to give your child that phone. I mean, we grew up without phones, but I mean, that's so tough because that's what every parent's going to play into.
Right.
So maybe we need to switch that perspective because it starts with one. So if you're the one that's like, "You know what, man, we're not going to be like that." Just imagine the statement that's going to make to you as a child. As you get older, you're going to be like, because what happened? A lot of things that your mom told you not to do, you appreciate now. So that's what's going to happen as that child grows up. At first, he's going to be like, "Man, everybody else has a phone, Dad. What's up with that?"
Yep.
But when he gets older, he's going to be like, "Oh, my dad was trying to protect me." And he did. My dad did protect me to some degree,
You hope, right?
I hope it could, because it could go the other way.
Yeah, but then there's also the other option of talking openly with your children about what's inside of that phone and perceptions of reality and
there we go.
Checking
That's another,
and things like that. And then there's that element of making room for people to fail.
Right on. I like that.
Like kids have to be allowed to fail.
Wow.
In a safe place, and then you learn from whatever, right? Like you said, there's so much we can't control.
Right.
Speaking of, Patrick, how old is he now?
He's 3.
He's 3. So what are some of the things that you're dealing with now, or what are some of the things that you're like that you think you need to be prepared for, like moving forward? Like, because I mean, it is a wide world out here. Like, how are you going to handle that?
My New Year's resolution for him is just not to yell at him, because I found myself kind of getting frustrated and yelling. And my mom made a good point. She said, no, your kid doesn't even remember you yelling at him. So now I just never yell at him. I'm just super patient. The things I worry about with him, I want him to get in a good elementary school. I want to stop paying for daycare.
That's where I am.
I'm really hoping that the public schools are in good shape.
Yeah.
By the time he gets there.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to pay for school anymore because it's expensive. And I just hope he can go to school and be surrounded by people who are open thinkers and you know, right now with like all the book banning and stuff, it's kind of weird. Like it is just kind of weird, like right now. And I don't know what's happening to Florida public schools, and I don't want to get too political, but it's like, gosh, I just don't want to pay for this kid to go to private school, man.
Right.
Like I need to find like a good public school where he's going to be allowed to like learn and possibly have sex education. Like I had sex ed. Like it helped me. It helped me understand what was going on in my body. And it was a conversation that my parents didn't have to have with me. And I'm open to having it with Patrick if I have to. But it'd be nice if there was somebody else in his life who could kind of teach him a little bit about that. He could bring that to me, and then I could bring my experiences to him. But I don't really worry about those things right now. All I'm really worried about with Patrick is try not to yell at him, try not to cuss too much in front of him, trying to make sure he's kind to his dog brother and his friends. He got in trouble at school because he...
Did he bite somebody?
No, he's been bitten, and I'm glad he didn't bite anybody. Wow. But like the teacher was like doing surprises, like, "Hey, surprise!" And then he goes, "What the fuck?" Because he's heard me. Because he was
surprised.
Well, and he's heard me say it. Like the other day in the car, somebody honked behind us, and it was kind of quiet because me and Danielle looked at each other. Because normally we'd say something, and it was quiet for like 5 seconds, and he goes, "Fucking car honking at us." And I was like, damn.
3 years old.
You know, it's so true. Like they'll say whatever you say. So those are the things I worry about. Like,
very true.
He's 3 years old, man, and like all I want is for him to be happy. He's just like a kid, right? Like your kid's 4.
4. Yeah.
Like you're just like, dude, I just want you to be happy.
Yeah.
Like what kind of, like you said, you didn't even watch the football game.
No.
You know,
I took him to the carnival. There was a carnival.
See, that's the same way. We went to the fair last Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just want him to have fun. I really don't think about anything with him. I just want him to be fun, fed, safe, clean.
Yeah.
Minimize shitting in his diapers at night, you know?
Yeah. I think my biggest concern for my son is just social interaction, right? I don't, because I'm not going to be there to like protect him and make everything okay. So when he's at school, you know, does he interact well with other kids? You know, does he feel out of place? Is this, you know, does he feel okay when he's hanging out with other children? And that's my biggest fear, is that, you know, he might struggle socially, and unfortunately I just gotta let him do it. You know what I'm saying? Like if he fails socially, he's gotta go through that. You know, we can't coddle him, we can't protect him through all of his experiences, and
it's the only way he's gonna grow.
Exactly. And I think the social aspect of school is probably, you know, one of the biggest testers for kids.
Back to what Ray said though, is like don't how'd you say about failing? You said don't allow them to fail.
Yeah.
Give them room for
make room for failure.
Yeah.
Like a kid has to feel comfortable enough. People in relationships have to feel comfortable enough saying, these are my shortcomings. Like somebody was like, they were kind of making jokes today on the radio, like there's a problem in dating now where people get on dates and they talk about therapy and the therapy that they get. And one person made a joke like, oh man, that's just a flex. Like I got health insurance that pays for therapy, you know? Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that people were going to therapy and feeling so comfortable with the things in their life that they felt like they could bring it to a date. And I thought, yeah, on one hand, that does put a lot of pressure on the person you're sitting across from, but it also kind of like shows like an ability to really talk about the things that really bother you. Like, I mean, gosh, kudos to that therapist for like getting somebody to that point where they felt like they could talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, And I think if we make room for each other to not be perfect and not have Instagram and be right, and like, and I think that'd be pretty cool for kids.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, dude, kids are so much smarter than we are anyway.
They are, and they're resilient as hell.
Yeah, so I don't know, dude. I'm a big believer that my kid's smarter than me already, and like the kid's just gonna teach me a bunch of stuff anyway. So you just got to be open to listening to
I remember you saying that.
I mean, you've raised a kid already.
I remember him saying that. He's like, one time he came over, him and Danielle, and we were all hanging out, and Dante was there, and he says, "Man, how does it feel that your child is smarter than you?" And at first I was like, what? And then as time goes on, like I see what he meant,
Yeah.
And I try to learn from my child, and like he's taught me some like great lessons. And how he did that was he said, like, for instance, like if I wasn't like listening to him, and he doesn't say this all the time, he says something every now and then. He's like, "Man, you're just like grandma, you don't listen."
No, because you heard somebody say that.
But that hit me.
No.
Yo, but that hit me hard though, because then that made me think, and I'm like, man, that's been my problem with my mom my whole life. So let me stop that, But to touch on like a lot of things that you said though, what does Patrick do? Like he cussed because he heard you do it.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. What children do is they
I
mimic.
don't mind that he cusses, to be honest.
Well,
Danny's not
there
gonna
you go.
like this, but I told him, you can't cuss at school.
Yeah.
If you're around me,
Yeah.
there are bad words and good words. There are things you can say, and you can treat people a certain way. I personally, and I don't know if it's right to give him this kind of freedom at this age, but I was like, I personally don't care if you use those words in the right context, because he uses them in the right context.
It's incredible.
But it's hard to know if he can know when and when not to. But so far, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, no, that's
Solid
great.
language skills.
Well, there it is though. Like he's going to do what the father allows, or what the father does, and that's just another principle. Like that's what Jesus says, I do as the Father does.
I think that's the coolest thing about the Bible, and like why I always get kind of crazy with like the way some people kind of twist religion is there's just some pretty good stories. Like everybody's selective. That's the other part about the Bible. It's such a big
they
book.
use it when they
it's such a big book that you can pull out any part of it to like apply to whatever you got going on.
For sure.
Whatever your agenda is. But I've always felt like there's so many great stories in the Bible about service and treating people well that you could have a guidebook. But
no, that's good, man. That's good. But what I was saying is I think they naturally do what they see us do.
100%.
And like, what are you doing? You're raising your child with a little bit of what your father taught you, and then he was raising you with a little bit of what his father taught him. And then that's the problem that we're having in society though these days, is that some kids are being raised with no father, or a father that's checked out.
Right.
So that's the problem. And so they don't really have someone to guide them and show them how life should be. So they got to go figure it out on their own.
Well, that is a big thing.
It's a big thing.
Well, single motherhood rates are really high these
Yeah.
days. So that's definitely a problem.
But that's why it takes like us to have better character, man, so that our children
us
will
as
be
men,
better.
or us as parents.
Yeah, but there's plenty of good
parents
kids
in
who've
general
grown up without fathers who are perfectly well adjusted and
Definitely.
great,
Absolutely.
Definitely. And you have to have that perspective, but I think it gives them a leg up to have a father in their life, to have a father that's present. Well,
it definitely does. I'm all about statistics, it, right? And they say that 80% of incarcerated people, men, came from single mother households, right? Or single parent households, I should say. Right. So it definitely.
I love his statistics, man. He's on it, man.
Well, I do a lot of research on the topics of like relationships.
That's a strong point you have, is that research, man. I love that.
So there, like you said, it's a leg up to have both parents in the household.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
To have both parents,
both
right?
parents,
Like,
yes.
I think that's
it's not one or the other.
But the other part is there's so much of that that's out of a kid's control, right? And then there's so much of that that's out of our control. Talking about it right here. Right? Like, so I get that we're talking about better outcomes for people, but what can I do about making sure the kid has two parents?
Mm-hmm. Well, no. All you got to, like, this is it. All you got to do is what you're doing. Like, so you're already doing it, bro. Like you're together. We just do what we can do, what we have control of. Like, you don't have to go out there and make a big change. You just work with what you got. So you're a 2-parent household. That's already making a statement. And that's going to be better for him. And I would say like this, that's another thing that comes to my mind is your wife, is an awesome woman. And it says a worthy wife is a crown for her husband, but a disgraceful woman is like cancer to his bones. So that's a lot of that is what's happening too a lot of times is some men are picking women that are like cancer to our bones.
It goes both ways.
And vice versa. Yes. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
And that's relationships in general.
Yes.
That's the hardest part in life. Like, that's why you feel for a kid who doesn't have a choice with who their parents are.
Right.
Because some kids get born into a really bad situation. I mean, you could have two parents. I mean, I think the stat about incarcerated men at 80% is very notable, but it could, there's probably situations, and I don't like anecdotes compared to facts,
sure,
where there's people with two parents who've beat the shit out of each other every night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And we're demonizing drugs. Like, I did that like automatically because society tells me to.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of two parent situations that are terrible. I know people whose parents left the spouse because if they would have stayed with the spouse, they would have been dead.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, like, you have to do what's best for you.
Yeah. So, but I get what you're saying. I mean,
there's no perfect solution. Again, it all comes down to risk mitigation, right? So statistically speaking, the outcome is more likely to be negative if this happens. Doesn't mean it's always true. Like you said, there are going to be examples where doing the opposite will still have a negative outcome, but it's all about mitigating that risk where you can.
Yeah, analyzing populations in prisons is some of the most important data gathering that can be had, because you could make an argument that our prison systems are exactly indicative of all of our failures as a society.
Mm-hmm.
And the people are in prisons for the reasons they're in prisons, for the reasons that they can't get out of prisons or are in prisons for a certain amount of time, are a direct reflection of our failures and our successes.
Sure.
In terms of how we treat people. Prison populations are often the most ignored groups in the country.
Yeah.
You could argue, if you paid more attention to prison populations, I think we would be a lot better off.
So let's highlight great fathers, because that's really the real hero, like a great father. I
disagree.
That's important, man. That is so important. And you disagree with that one?
I mean, I think it's just too general. Like, John had a great mother. Like, John's one of the best people I know. Like, I never met John's dad, Like, so, I don't know, man. Like,
I never met my dad.
Right. So it's like, I don't know, man. I get, like, I like Chris's stat a lot. Like, 80% of incarcerated men came from a single family household.
Mm-hmm. Single parent, yeah.
Or a single parent household, I'm sorry. So, but I mean, I think putting it on the father, on one, it's a good aspiration, but it's a lot of pressure on a guy. and two, it's not fair to mothers or aunts or grandmothers.
There's a lot of great
mothers,
but I'm saying we should definitely recognize good fathers. That's, I'm not saying above anyone else, but it should be a highlight. We should put more emphasis on being a good father and what that does for a family, because also at some point, like, say for instance, like John, he's stepping up and he's going to be a great father. Mm-hmm. So like, that's what it takes. It takes a man.
I don't know. Are you planning on having kids?
Yeah, at some point. I don't know when. I mean, it's kind of I don't want to say get to it fast, because that's one thing I told her. I'm like, look, just because we get married doesn't mean we have to have a kid like 6 months in. Like, let's enjoy ourselves, our marriage, our husband and wifeness. Let's enjoy that first. But I did buy myself some time with her being as young as she is.
Yeah, she's young, you're old, so
you have to keep yourself up.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I learned with Danielle getting pregnant. When she got pregnant, they considered hers like a geriatric resident.
I think 35 or older is geriatric.
How old was she when she?
I don't know. Was it 3 years? 2019. I'm really bad at math, so however, I mean, maybe 35, maybe,
okay.
Or 36. But I learned how dangerous it was for a woman to have babies in that age. Thankfully, she's exceptional in that she's very fit. She ran every single day, pretty much, of the pregnancy up until the day before she gave birth.
Okay.
Oh,
good for her.
So that's reflected in his energy levels and and his overall health.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anecdotally speaking, I can't say that word right now. I know a woman who had a kid at 46.
Yeah.
So yeah, high risk, right? Definitely a high risk pregnancy, but it can happen. The only thing is that, again, the risk mitigation thing, you really don't want to run that risk, and we're seeing that become more and more prevalent. Women are putting off motherhood till later in life so they can focus on their career and their education.
Right.
Freezing their eggs till later, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's safe for women or the baby to do that. Science has come a long way, and obviously, with the advancements, it's less of a risk than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. But I still think it's too big of a risk for a lot of ladies to want to wait until their 40s to have children.
And that's where you could argue, like, employers should make it easier for women to be mothers and advancing their careers at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, why should a woman have to wait to have a baby because she has to get through certain parts of her career?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one thing that a man never has to do. Like, just make room for women to be mothers too. So it is crazy that they have to freeze their eggs and wait. I mean,
yeah,
that's unfair. It's funny when I hear other people say these things I read and they say them out loud.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I can't believe we're even talking like about that. Like, God, it's so unfair.
Yep.
But I mean, to your point, John, you have a kid, you're a little bit older, Christina's a little bit younger. Every relationship is special in that father, son, unique. Like, that's cool. Like, so everybody had a friend who was like, yo, that's your dad? that's not your grandpa? Or like vice versa. David, you had a kid so young, and now Dante could go out together.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, dude, he was
Pretty
probably
awesome.
driving you around, right? Like, so it's like everybody's different, man. And gosh, going back to what we said off mic earlier, the hardest part is just staying alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you should be. So what you're saying is you should celebrate that birthday.
Oh, dude, like I told you, dude, I allowed myself to acknowledge my birthday. I used to hide it, I hide it everywhere, and I still do. But I used to just be like, no, it's not my birthday,
Right on.
But you have to celebrate your birthday, man.
Right on, dude.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, right on, man. Is there anything on your heart, man, that you wanted to get out? Like anything that you wanted to speak about? I mean, you do it all the time, anyways, with your journalism.
No, not really. It's nice to talk with people. I mean, I knew that this podcast would be a little bit difficult for me just because I think that one, it's not my expertise, and two, and I think you all, we have dissenting views on some things, and I don't put myself in those situations quite often, but it's nice to talk to people. And I think that's the most important thing, right? It's talking.
Yeah.
And I think you guys, it's pretty cool that you take this much time to talk to each other and spend time with each other. So, no, I don't have anything on my heart, man.
Right on, man. Okay. How about you, John?
Nothing in my heart, but my bladder's calling.
Nothing in my heart.
All right.
Well, I appreciate both you guys for coming on, man. We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much, Ray, for taking the time, and you too, John.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thank you, man.
Thank
for having us in your house.
Oh, no worries, man. It's great having you.
Yeah. Cool.
Right on.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. You can catch all of our episodes on YouTube and Spotify at Better Gents Podcast, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Better Gents Pod. Thank you and take care.